Hi, so after finally killing Mythic Argus, I thought I'd go through some tips that I found as a Retribution Paladin that may be of use to people who are still progressing on Mythic Argus, which of course has still got many months to go before BFA comes out. I hope you find it useful. Let's get straight into it. Alright, so the first thing we should look at is the talents. Now, it's not quite standard set of talents here. Most of them are final verdict, of course, there. But on the second row, I've got Fires of Justice. I could have taken Zeal as well. I was and ahhing and did try both out, and then decided to go with Fires of Justice. Why not Greater Judgment? Greater Judgment, surely in any situation, means you do more damage. Yes, it does, including on this fight. As a result of not taking Greater Judgment, I have done overall less damage on this fight. So why do it? Well, the reason is this. Let's take the phases. Now, there's 3 phases. I could almost call it 4 for reasons I'll go over later, but there's 3 phases. The first phase is a DPS check. You do need to transition it into phase 2 before a certain point so that you don't get like extra fears and rages and things like that. The second phase is not really a DPS check. In fact, as you'll see later on in this kill, we actually have to take DPS off for a little while. But the third phase, particularly at the sharp end of it, when you're going below 30%, is a really mad DPS check. And at that point, of course, Greater Judgment does nothing for you. Greater Judgment is contributing nothing. You might as well have no talents at all at that point in the fight. But that's the point in the fight that's going to determine whether or not you kill this boss. Hence, Fires of Justice or Zeal will contribute some damage, so you might as well take them. So that's talents over. Just before we pull, just note, normally what happens when we pull a boss is I would go in, lead with Blade of Justice, and then Judgment, Crusade, Spend, blah, blah, blah. In this particular case, I'm going to lead with Judgment because the boss is going to come to us, so Judgment will be in range far quicker than Blade of Justice, so it's just a little bit easy to do it that way around for me. Also note, with potions, stock up on Old War and Prolonged Power, because I'm going to use both. In the full course of this fight, we're going to get to use potions 4 times. I'm going to use Prolonged Power for the first 3, and then I'm going to use Old War for the last 1, because we die twice, so that means potions can reset. So as we pull the boss, you might need to adjust a little bit so you don't get caught by the cleave there. Make sure you're always definitely behind the boss. Now, at this point, we've gotten the weak aura telling us to melee spread there. I've got 2 messages just to be sure. It's 2 different weak auras telling me that's the problem with it. Bit of a mess, my weak auras. At this point, we need to spread out because the Rage and Fear is going to come in. We've got 7 melee here, which is a lot. We've never had fewer than 6, so we've got a lot of melee. So my position is out on the right-hand side, but at max melee range, because there's also someone on the right-hand side in, closer to the melee there. Now, what you'll notice is, as it's coming in, there's a weak aura that puts a red ring around here. That is counting down to when it's going to go out. So when, obviously, that completes, the ability will go out. I need to be in position. It's red at the moment, but as soon as I get myself out of range of everyone else, so that if I get rage, I won't chain it to other people, it goes green. Now, this actually, bizarrely, wasn't working the last couple of weeks. I got this weak aura a few weeks ago, and it was fine. It was all fine and dandy. Then for like a couple of weeks, for some reason, it was staying red even when I was definitely out of range of everyone else. I don't know what that was about, but it seemed to be working again now. I am going to put a link to that weak aura and any other useful weak auras in the description below. But the other weak auras I have, I wouldn't use those because you're better off, because they had to be set up by the guild. The whole guild had to have them. So you're better off getting the ones the rest of your guild. But the one with the ring that tells you about the range, I would definitely recommend because it's really useful. So as soon as that's finished, of course, I can get back in. I don't have to be in a massive rush, but I do want to get back in here because we're now going to get the orbs going out onto people, and it might include on you. Now, you may do it differently. The way we do it is we spawn the haste versatility one slightly behind melee, although it's always spawned far too far back for my liking. But there you go. And the crit mastery one is always nearer melee. That way you can get whichever one you want. If whatever you get, you should just probably keep so that you can stack them up. However, I prefer the crit mastery one, but I get the haste versatility one first. Now, there's method to my madness there. It's not because I particularly need the haste or versatility at the moment, because I've got Crusade, I've got loads of haste. The reason is, if I take the crit mastery one now, then there's a chance that it can run out before I get the second one. Now, some people will be thinking to themselves, well, no, that's not a problem, because the way it stacks, as soon as the next orb spawns, if you get it straight away, then you will get the second stack, you'll just about make it. The problem is this: if you get Soul Blight and have to move out, you may not get back in time to get that orb and get the second stack. So I delay getting the Crit Mastery one. Now, do note that as soon as you've picked up one of these buffs, you can't accidentally go over it again. So if I just run into these like a bull in a china shop, I'm guaranteed to get the Crit Mastery one because I can't possibly reset the Haste Versatility one. So that's what I've got. Gone out for Cone. Now you notice I am in the position to bait the Cone along with everyone else. You may have heard a vicious rumour that it can't target melee. Now, here's the thing. It has targeted me several times. We were told this when we started progressing on it, and I used to treat that as if, okay, so I can't be targeted, I don't need to bait it, I'll just go where's most comfortable for me. But the odd time, not very often, but the odd time it did target me. Now, here's the thing. I'm not going to say exactly how this mechanic works. It is possible, because this sort of thing does happen. Sometimes you get mechanics that basically will only target ranged players unless you don't have above a certain number of valid ranged DPS, in which case it can target other players like melee DPS. It is possible that because we've never had fewer than 6 melee, which is even that's a lot for this fight, that means there's not enough ranged DPS. The game says, right, we're going to target some melee as well. So maybe if you only take 3 or 4 melee, it won't target them. I don't know that. All I'm saying is that with the rosters we've been taking, it does target melee. So assume it does. It's no big deal, just always be in the bait position. So we move out. Then I move back so I don't get hit by that cleave. And then we're just getting ourselves into position to go for the next position. We sort of move it out a bit. We move it quite a lot. I've seen some guilds not move it anywhere near that much. Spreading out again. Again, look for the green thing there. You see, I didn't get hit by that rage. I was at the right position. Now, you might have to stay. When you're picking up the orb again, just going through the orb, I find it often doesn't register and you end up not picking it up. Just stay in it for a second until it's registered. Have a weak aura such as I've got. I'm going to use my Ashbringer pointer here. This buff here. This weak aura that lets me know which one I've got and when. Useful to get yourself one of those. As I say, I'm not going to link the weak auras I use for that because it's a whole package, some of which I don't think is all that brilliant. You're far better off finding someone in your guild who'll link you something more suitable, or go onto class discords or something. But as soon as you got the second, then you can move out of position. Just don't panic and it's all good. And then getting back into position. As soon as the cooldown on the potion finishes, you do want to be taking another one. And again, it's a prolonged power. Now, you may ask yourself, why prolonged power? Because Retribution Paladin, we use Old War in a pure single target situation. The reason is because we're getting more buffs. Well, it's the reason I do it anyway. So, I'm going to get stronger during this prolonged power, because at some point, I'm going to get a third stack of this Crit Mastery. And then potentially a fourth stack before my prolonged power would wear out. So that works out a bit better than the Old War, at least. So I'm just using prolonged power for both the first and the second pots here. You'll also notice I've got a countdown for the cones. This is via bigwigs. I like bigwigs because you can put countdowns on certain abilities. Now, I always find it very important not to do countdowns on abilities like en masse. Because the problem then is if you're doing countdowns for like all the important abilities, then for each particular countdown, it's like, well, what is it for? You've still got to check what it's for. And you can sort of tune it out because it's happening too often. So keep it so it's only going to do it for one. So I have countdowns for the following two abilities. One is this cone, which only happens in phase 1. 2 is the module, which only happens in phase 3. So those countdowns never run into each other. And again, I'm in baiting position here. Move round. Waiting for the buff. You need to get the buff at this point and then get into the spread position, because we're going to get another set of rages and fears. Move on to someone with fear there. One of the things that will cause a lot of problems for your raid when you're learning this fight will always be people not considering everyone else. This is a real teamwork fight. You know, it's not a case of, oh, I didn't get fear, therefore I'll mill around. If you didn't get fear, you should be on the lookout for who did get fear and move on to them. The number of times I've got fear away from the boss, particularly in phase 2, and someone has gone past me to get to the boss from their spread position, but not through me to help me out, is ridiculous. You need to be on the lookout. Your first thought needs to be, yes, we need to do DPS, but your first thought has to be, who's got the fears? Anyone near me? Do I need to stand on them to help them out? So they don't get too many stacks. If you get 1 stack of fear, well, that's fairly standard, not too bad. But you don't want anyone getting 2 or anything like that. Now, you can also see the way we do this, which is not the way everyone does it, is our melee rage will be on the right-hand side there, or the left-hand side, sorry, of the boss, which, because we spawn the buffs on the right-hand side, they won't generally be getting them, depending on which rage they get. So they just have to suck that up, I'm afraid. Again, moving out the cone there, and then moving back. I've got a Soul Blight at this point, so I'm moving over here to drop it at the back. And then, whoa, someone's dropped that on me. Now, you'll notice what I do at this point is I move there. I don't carry on moving through it. 1 tick, you can see I can just about survive. A lot of people can't. In fact, because I know I can survive 1 tick, I got into the habit. Sometimes people will have Soul Blight plus the orbs at the same time. So one of the orbs may actually be dropped in a Soul Blight. Of course, at that point, you should just go, oh, well, it's lost to me. I'll just take the other orb. Unless you've got a good defensive that will allow you to survive it. But I knew I could survive it. Low health, but I could survive it. But then there was one time when I did that and I tried to nick an orb out of a Soul Blight and that killed me. And I was not very popular. So at that point, I never did it again. Even though that was like the first time after hundreds of wipes that it had been a problem. But it was a problem that one time. So best avoided. Now, the issue here is not so much the person who dropped that Soul Blight in my path, because they shouldn't have done. They should have dropped it along the edge of the cone there. The big problem was, if I use my Ashbringer pointer again, so they should be dropping it along here. So you can see I dropped mine along that edge, because no one's going to be standing there again. You know, shouldn't be dropping it in someone's place there. The problem is the person who dropped this one here, that is by the edge, should have dropped it a bit further along so that they could have gone into where that one was. I think that was where the problem was. It's also possible that they left it a bit late to be moving out in the first place, or that they weren't looking behind them. But to be fair, they shouldn't have needed to. This person should have dropped it much further up, and then this one should have been able to nestle in there. But yeah, at that particular situation, of course, most of the people, that could have killed them. In my particular case, well, I had the stamina to affect it, but again, you don't carry on running through it. As soon as you get to the side, you get out of it as soon as possible, even though it's going to delay you. You can see my buff is running out here. There's a chance at this point that I might not be able to restack mine, but you know what? Better than dying. Yes, I'd have had a bubble that could have auto-procced at this point, which wouldn't be a big deal. I shouldn't need my bubble in phase 2, so it should be back up for phase 3, which is when I really need my bubble. But in the end, I did manage to stack it up, so I've got 4 stacks, all to the good. Now, 70% of course is going to phase into phase 2. It's very important we do it at that point so we don't get another round of fears and rages, because that is not good. Although that may happen when you're first progressing on the fight. Now, at this point, I've got Crusade Race. I am going to use it straight away. Some people like to use it when they get nestled into a nice phase 2 position. But the problem is then you might get the bomb and have to move out. The other thing is I've still got this crit buff, so I want to try and get some use out of that. I say crit buff, mastery is the key thing there with the Crusade. So, again, stack positions once you know you haven't got a rage. I hate this phase completely, but this is just one way. You just need to do it according to how your guild does it. Once the Crusade's over, there's nothing particularly retty that's special about this. Just remember, like to begin with, I was always making sure I was in melee range of the boss. So when we have to move because of these sides there, I would tend to move into the boss's hitbox if necessary, just to maximize DPS. However, when you're getting ready to kill the boss, you'll often find that you need to take DPS off. You've got too much DPS in phase 2. So I was actually fairly easy at this point. I'm not trying to really push it. because I know we're going to have to stop anyway at some point. Obviously use Shield of Vengeance on cooldown because bombs at least will burst it, you know, when they're out, and there's bombs out quite a lot of the time. But, you know, this phase is a bit of a bugger when you've got rage because you have to be at the side, and sometimes sides can move you well away from melee range. They didn't in this case. I got away with it. In which case, of course, you're not completely helpless. You can fire Divine Storms into it. Remember, until BFA comes out, at least they will go, you know, 20 yards forward. So you can hit him with the odd Divine Storm. You notice at this point, again, I'm not maximising my DPS because we're going to have to stop. In fact, I think this is, yeah, this is the point where I have stopped DPS because we're going to phase it a little bit too quickly. We don't want to give ourselves a hard time of it in phase 3. At the same time, we don't want to do it too slowly either. So, you know, we need to make sure we do it before the sort of next round of Rages and Fears goes out because we want to use those to kill ourselves. Now, at this point, we want to kill ourselves. Now, of course, Argus will kill us for us. The problem is our potion cooldown doesn't start until we're dead. So we want to kill ourselves ASAP. There's quite a long RP coming here, during which my potion can completely reset so that I can use it straight away at the start of phase 3. That's what I want to do, because I've also got Crusade ready to go as well. But I don't want my bubble proccing. So what I need to do is give myself Forbearance. So at this point, you've got two choices, Lay on Hands or Blessing of Protection. Now, I was using Lay on Hands for a while and then Blessing of Protection the second time we kill ourselves. The problem then is I don't have my Blessing of Protection. If anyone needs it, let's say anyone gets caught by a scythe in phase 3, because that's Blessing of Protection will help deal with that. So I use Blessing of Protection here because then I know it will be up for when I need it in phase 3, if I need it in phase 3. So I put Blessing of Protection on myself, stand on the Rages, get myself killed. Job's a good one. RP is going to go out. And then my potion, you can see, is cooling down at this point. And it will be ready at the start of that phase 3. Now, when Argus drags us all to the middle there, I point myself to where the tree is going to be. And I want an overhead view, because we need to avoid the ghost Shah things. Keep an eye on the timer. Always make sure you've got your boss timers in a convenient position. You can see this Gift of the Lifebinder still got some time to go. But as soon as it goes, we want to be off. The first few seconds, remember, you cannot trigger any Shah. But after that, you will be able to. So you need to make sure that doesn't happen. The number of times that, again, you will be cooked because someone will trigger a Shah, cause a knockback, knock everyone else back. Because even when you've just rezzed, you are still susceptible to the knockback. It was absolutely insane. So as soon as that comes up, release Spirit, overhead view so you can see where things are, so that Argus isn't getting in the way of it. Check the tree. Sometimes it's a little trickier to see them in the trees. And then we want to get back. We need to interrupt. So use Potion and Crusade there. Potion of Prolonged Power again for the third one. Interrupt as late as possible. Someone else may choose to do that. Especially if you've got a Shadow Priest with Cephas, they would want that, but we haven't got one. The person who was doing it, unfortunately, wasn't here tonight. Get into position. Now, for this one, we're standing on the sides for this one. Just be aware of where you need to be between the sides or on the sides. If they're rotating, you want to be between them, of course. And then you need to spread out again. At this point, we're baiting it behind the boss. This made a massive difference to our chances here. And at this point, immediately target that orb and Divine Storm through it. If the boss is being tanked close to the orb, which is where it should be, we made massive gains as soon as it was. You're going to get benefit from Retribution procs, you'll notice there. Again, if you use the old Ashbring, I've got my... This is a tell me when rather than a week order, because I set those up myself. And, you know, certain tanks have to die on this fight. There's nothing that can be done about it in this phase. So, you know, you're going to get the benefit of Retribution passive procs there, which is all to the good. Make sure you exit the area, you know, when you need to. So the range should be finishing off the module. You get it down to like, you know, 20% or something. And then the range should be dealing with it. If there's more range, you can exit a little bit quicker. Straight onto the boss. This is where Word of Glory may be required. Remember, the first two chains are both going to be broken. This does quite a lot of damage before, you know, ticks are coming in. You want to make sure you're on full health. If you're not, then again, this is where Word of Glory comes in useful. I didn't have to use Word of Glory on this one because it was all fine. Remember, you've got Healthstone as well. Always have a full stock of Healthstones before every pull because, again, you can easily use all 3 charges. You could actually potentially use 4 if you had them, if you needed it in every phase. And again, you can see the countdown there is counting down to the baiting position so that I know to move out, not too... Because sometimes you need to bait it outside of melee range. Here, we're not having to do that, but if you did... You don't want to be leaving too early because then you're losing DPS on the boss. This is a massive DPS check. But at the same time, you don't want to get out too late and then bait it in the wrong position. So I have the countdown so that I know with confidence when I need to get out for. As soon as it starts on the 5, I need to get into position. Again, Divine Storming through, as long as I know the boss is within 20 yards of it. And then making sure I don't exit too late, so getting out when it's on about 20%. I mean, it's the cast time that's really important here. Again, spreading Divine Storm. If I've got a spender ready to go and I'm out of melee range, I'm going to use Divine Storm. I'm not messing about here. Again, I'm out of range here, so I'm just going to Divine Storm through it. No messing. Now, I've got a chain at this point. That means I can't... and I'm not going to be the one to break it, so I can't move close to the boss anyway as we get ready to bait it. So at this point, I'm going to lose a bit of DPS myself, but it's soon time to bait anyway. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to move back at this point. But I was just trying to fire the odd Divine Storm through the boss to maximise damage on that boss. Especially as we'd very recently had a 0.2% wipe. Every little helps there. So baiting it. And at this point, I'm not even going to try and go through the boss. I just want this orb done as quickly as possible. But I have to watch my chains. I cannot move far away from my root position. I'm not rooted, but you know, where the chains start from. Until that has expired, otherwise I'll kill a load of people. As well as give everyone massive thing there. So I'll just get to where I can. Now that it's broken, I can get out. A big amount of damage went in there. I was on full health, but not everyone was. Again, Word of Glory potentially could have been used there, but I didn't necessarily think that people would have died. At this point, we're about to suicide again fairly soon. Now, at this point, I can be between the sides and still DPS the boss. So that's what I'm doing. And then I need to move on to where those sides were. Again, I can just about get into melee range and be safe there. Now, at this point, we're going to suicide again. The rages and the fears are going to come out. The way we're doing it, so we're suiciding on the 3rd chains effectively. And we're going to do it by the tree. The idea being that the tank can bait the module. As soon as that module is spawned, we res up. It doesn't matter about these ghost shard because we can res up on the tree. We're immune to them, remember, for the first few seconds and immediately get out of there. But again, it's another situation where I've got my bubble. Now, if my Divine Shield was on cooldown, it's not a problem. I'll just die with everyone else. But because it's not, it's still available. And I don't want to waste it. I need Forbearance again. Now, I've got Blessing of Protection available, but this is phase 3. At any point, someone might ask for my Blessing of Protection to deal with the Scythe. So I'm going to use Lay on Hands to give myself Forbearance there. And again, I'm looking. As soon as that module spawned there, I'm going to release immediately. You don't wait for anyone to say so. As soon as you see it, I know where it's going to be, so I'll make sure my camera's pointed that way. Release into the tree. Don't even think about the shard. Doesn't matter. And then you do that. Now, if we'd have died earlier, just for some reason, let's say, so we couldn't just, and we weren't near the tree, you will have to release and get yourself on the other side of the tree. At that point, of course, you do need to be careful of the shard so you don't cock everyone else over. But yeah, at this point, this is the last one we need to get. Again, if you can get into position, Divine Storm through it. If the boss is close enough, then get yourself out nice and early. Don't forget to rune after each time. I always rune as soon as I release because that's before I can do any damage anyway. And at this point, you know, we haven't got Fears and Rages. We've not going to get them just yet. Pump as much damage into the boss as you can. Now, I haven't used my potion yet, of course, because Crusade's still not off cooldown. The last potion is going to be Old War. Or that's what I use anyway. That's my preference. But and our Heroism is still not quite off cooldown. I mean, this is the reason why, for example, you want to hold DPS in Phase 2. Because you want to make sure you can use Heroism in Phase 3 to get extra damage out. Otherwise, you know, you might be in a bit of trouble. because it's nothing to do with the berserk timer as such. It's more to do with when abilities come in that are just going to straight up kill you because you've run out of healing cooldowns to deal with them, or just going to do too much damage. Again, now you'll notice here there were people actually on, you can't hear them, there's people on Discord saying to spread before I actually did spread. That if melee do that and move out of melee range, again, you're losing DPS on the boss. Wait until you know you have to spread, and that is, again, the benefit of this weak aura. Because as soon as that goes out, then I know I need to spread. Before it's gone out, I don't need to spread, so I'm not going to. So I'll do that. I haven't got anything. Get onto the person with the fear so they don't get loads of stacks. Then we're going to bait out a bit. Someone was in slightly the wrong position. Not a big deal. Just get onto it. Again, Divine Storm through it to get the boss killed. Or at least damaged. And again, make sure you're not in too long. Keep an eye on that cast bar. You don't want to be in it when it finishes. Now, Crusade is almost coming off cooldown here, so you're starting to check your holy power, make sure that it's all right, judgments on the boss, and then into it. After a few seconds, I'm going to use Old War. So that's my, potion of choice for this bit here, because the fight is very nearly over now. This is a mad DPS check. Again, you'll notice there's damage going out here. If it looks like there's a few people on low health, then you want to use Word of Glory. It's better that you do Word of Glory and save someone than a Templar's Verdict. Now, I've got Rage here. Someone else has got Rage in melee. I've got Wings up. Now I'm losing DPS. This is a bit of an arsehole, but at the same time, I can't just charge over everyone. There's a couple of melee that don't have Rage that are still in my way on the right-hand side. They should have shifted over to the left immediately. They're a bit slow about it, so I'm just going to... And that person's going to need to edge up so I can get in as well. You need to be doing DPS. I mean, I've already lost too much damage there with the wings. Although I say too much damage, the boss died, don't matter. But just get yourself to position. The people with the fears are going to have to be a bit careful, or those who don't have the rages. You need to allow everyone to get in. Very important, like I said earlier in the fight, that you consider everyone else, not just look after number one. The whole team needs to be in on this, so you need to be a bit sensible about it. So you get as close as possible. At this point, this is where I definitely want my bubble up. The 0.2% wipe we had, for example, I reckon might have been a kill if I'd have had my bubble available. Unfortunately, something in phase 3 used it. But at this point, I've got it. So I'm not even worried necessarily about being in there. The reason I moved across to the left here, because that's a stupid thing to do, I'm going to give a load of people rage. A load of people moved into me anyway, and the boss at this point was dead. It's like less than 1% now. Nothing's going to stop that. And there you go, boss dead. Down he goes. So, those are sort of my main thoughts as a Retribution Paladin on this fight in terms of how best to deal with it. As I say, you do lose some damage by not taking Greater Judgment. It is a little significant as well, because you've got to think about it this way. He stays above 50% for a lot of the fight. Because when it goes from phase 2 to phase 3, you get to the end of phase 2 at 40%, but then he goes straight back up to 60%. So again, you're getting more use out of Greater Judgment there. You also, of course, get use out of Greater Judgment on the modules. Technically, your first judgment on those modules will also guarantee crit, but that's not really worth it for the Greater Judgment. So that's why I'm saying, if DPS is at all tight, then take Fires of Justice or Zeal. If, however, it's not, and all you need is to execute it and you've easily got enough damage to kill the boss in phase 3, then sure, go with Greater Judgment. So I hope that was useful to you. If it was, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share with other people who might also be interested. And until next time, I'll see you later.